When Hurricane Idalia made landfall as a Category 3 storm, the fear was that it could cause catastrophic damage and loss of life. A Category 3 is a major hurricane, winds topping out at around 200 kilometers an hour. But the strongest hurricanes usually aren't the deadliest. In a study of 50 years of hurricanes hitting the United States, only 3 of the 10 deadliest storms were Category 3 or higher. The truth is, people die in storms for all kinds of reasons.
Just moments ago, authorities in Pennsylvania confirmed devastating details of a deadly flash flood. At least 5 people were killed when an entire family got swept away.
2 months after Hurricane Harvey hit Texas, a 31-year-old man has died after he contracted the rare flesh-eating disease.
So here's what I did. I went through academic studies, news reports, reams of data from various national governmental agencies, and I compiled a list of the most common ways people die during hurricanes. Now, I should say, this list is imperfect and imprecise for a few reasons. We can't always know a person's cause of death, for example. And how it's classified can be a little confusing. There can be multiple causes of death, like if strong winds and flooding push your car into oncoming traffic and the driver you hit has a heart attack. Like, how do you categorize that, right? But to understand the main ways hurricanes can kill, especially as a way of gauging risk for yourself, before, during, or after a hurricane, this may help.
All right, we're going to head back out to Metairie, where a shooting happened out at a gas station.
This is a good reminder that not everyone who dies from a hurricane dies directly from the hurricane.
It sounds like 2 people got into an altercation over some gas and 1 person was shot.
In this case, one driver shot another and he died. This was about 2 years ago in the aftermath of Hurricane Ida. You know, tempers flared so often at gas stations. Lines were long, it was hot outside, people needed to fill their generators, that a sheriff in New Orleans implored people not to be gas holes.
But hostilities are high around here, and for anybody to bring a gun to a gas station, it's not needed. In
another case, 2 Hurricane Ian contractors got into a fight, and again, one shot the other dead. This is considered a hurricane-related death, because if there was no hurricane, probably no one gets shot. Of the 160-plus deaths from Hurricane Ian, this was the only one where the listed cause of death was a homicide. This is a really tough one to rank because suicide rarely, if ever, has just one cause. But Florida's Medical Examiners Commission put Hurricane Ian-related deaths by suicide at about 3% of all deaths.
I literally watched my house disappear with everything in it. Right before my eyes.
It's like a bomb went off and you just keep shaking your head.
Hurricane Ian was absolutely devastating. You know, if you were lucky, only your home was destroyed. But think of people who lost pets, friends, family, partners, and what it must have been like to see your entire neighborhood, maybe where you grew up and spent your entire life, all gone. A surprising number of people in Florida, by some estimates more than 80%, don't have flood insurance. So rebuilding can be difficult, if not impossible. We so often talk about disaster relief in terms of physical things, but mental health absolutely suffers after a hurricane, and some people never recover.
Oh. You get that on video? There you go, keep it going. Power flashes everywhere, guys.
When you have hurricane-force winds blowing through city streets, you know when power's been knocked out. But it's not always so obvious how to gauge the threat. For example, your home fills with water, you've forgotten to turn the breakers off. In a 2016 study looking at hurricanes and tropical storms in the US between 1963 and 2012, researchers counted 65 deaths from electrocution. In nearly every hurricane that made landfall, at least one person died this way. And it's not just people at home or random pedestrians navigating down lines who are at risk. the effort to bring power back online is also very dangerous work. The study goes on to point out that of people who died during power restoration work, half were utility workers.
If you have chosen to use a generator, please ensure that the generator is properly ventilated, because we certainly do not want anyone to have a loss of life because of carbon monoxide poisoning.
In that same study I just mentioned, carbon monoxide poisoning just edged out electrocution as a cause of death. And it doesn't take a hurricane for this to be a real risk. In Quebec, during a vicious ice storm a few months ago, a man died in his garage after running a generator inside during a blackout. Within a span of just a few hours, Montreal's health authorities said it had received about 60 calls for carbon monoxide poisoning. And it's not just generators, barbecues, grills, campfire stoves, cars.
A Houston woman and an 8-year-old girl were overcome by carbon monoxide fumes as they struggled to stay warm inside a car.
There are a few reasons you see so many more deadly accidents during and after a hurricane than at any other time. For one, chaotic conditions can just catch you off guard.
Take a look at this. One more reminder why drivers need to be careful in this wet weather. Cars were spinning out and crashing across several lanes. Oof.
4% of all deaths from Hurricane Ian last year were car crashes. But in the past half century, almost 1 in 5 indirect deaths from hurricanes were car crashes.
This car actually hydroplaned, then flipped over.
It is easy to misjudge what just a few inches of water on a road can do. That's enough to wash your car away.
When Hurricane Katrina struck New Orleans, entire neighborhoods vanished under 20 feet of water. The devastation ranks as one of America's worst natural disasters.
After Hurricane Katrina, a study out of the University of Cambridge looked at 971 hurricane-related deaths, about 800 of which there was a known cause of death. They found about 25% of those deaths were people dying of severe trauma or injury. There's a lot of ways that can happen, most of which you can probably imagine. Debris being hurled around, wind catching you off guard, being swept away by water, and sometimes buildings collapse. And falls, those account for a surprising number of deaths. During Hurricane Ian, more than every other cause I've listed so far. Look at this. An article on Ian's death toll includes mention of a 71-year-old who fell off a roof while putting up rain shutters. When you look at all indirect hurricane deaths, heart attacks is right up there. But hurricanes wreak havoc on hospitals too.
So if all this shut down and you weren't able to get dialysis for days, it could be life-threatening.
Yes, it could be.
But with a threat from Hurricane Harvey,
be safe, okay? All right, James, you too.
These centers must close.
A dramatic rescue took place at a hospital. The backup generators there also failed. Tiny babies rushed out, oxygen pumped by hand.
Even those who managed to evacuate. What happens if you need medical help and it just can't reach you? During Hurricane Katrina, bridges connecting islands to the mainland were washed away. The power grid was left in shambles. And in that University of Cambridge study, they say 1 in 3 died due to illness. Heart disease, diabetes, infection, even people who succumb to cancer because they just can't get the help they need.
Where?
The danger with wind is not the wind itself. It's not that people blow away. This video is famous because people can't believe how much strength and balance it takes to stay upright in a Category 5 storm. But if even one thing hits that guy at that wind speed, it could be anything, like a street sign, a fence post, even a rock, that could kill him. 8% of all hurricane-related deaths between 1963 and 2012 were attributed to wind. Flying debris is a major threat, but wind also uproots trees. According to one study, nearly a third of directly storm-related deaths from Hurricane Sandy were from fallen trees. The amount of rain that falls during a hurricane can be deadly.
This morning, the flash flooding threat expanding into Texas, Oklahoma, and Louisiana.
When city drains can't handle the sudden influx of water, flash floods can begin and overwhelm so quickly. People, vehicles, property, they can all be swept away with very little warning. In places with steep terrain, you can also have mudslides. Historically, heavy rainfall has been one of the biggest killers when it comes to hurricanes in the U.S. Drowning, the leading cause of death. So there's some overlap here, but storm surge deserves special mention unto itself.
I want to show you something that, look at that stop sign. To the left of the stop sign is a storm surge indicator. The water right now is, as you can see, around 9 feet.
Storm surge is when the winds blow so hard, sea level rises up and above parts of land that are normally dry. Entire communities being put underwater makes storm surge the deadliest part of a hurricane. It was estimated that hundreds of people died during Katrina because the water in some places was 15, 20 feet high. People tried to shelter at home, hunkered down in their attics, thinking they were safe, high enough, but they weren't. In the last decade, the National Weather Service has gone to great lengths to educate people about the threat of storm surge, historically accounting for about half of all U.S. deaths due to hurricanes.